That bill is set down for first reading. The House comes to questions for oral answer. Question number 1, in the name of Alastair Scott.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, what reports has he received on New Zealand's external financial position?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, today Statistics New Zealand released the balance of payments and international investment position figures for the December 2016 quarter and the December year. They showed that New Zealand's annual current account deficit was down to 2.7% of GDP, well down on the 3.4% of GDP for the previous year to December. The deficit for the most recent quarter was also the smallest deficit since the March 2014 quarter, and it reflected in part increased income earned through New Zealanders investing abroad and also our export sector.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Alastair Scott.
To the Minister, what is New Zealand's net international liability position?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, today's release shows New Zealand's net international liability position at $156.5 billion New Zealand dollars is 59.9% of GDP, the lowest it has been since records began in the series in 2000. In addition, New Zealand's overall net external debt was down to 55% of GDP, well down on the nearly 85% of GDP this government inherited. So that's 55% today as against 85% in 2008. That's very good progress for New Zealand. It's a tribute to our exporters and it's a tribute to the success of New Zealanders investing overseas.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Alastair Scott.
To the Minister, how has the services sector contributed to New Zealand's improvement?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, the statistics show that New Zealand's services surplus was $1.2 billion, up $174 million on the September 2016 quarter surplus, and is the highest ever. This is due to an increase in both the number of tourists and the amount they spend, but also the international education sector has contributed strongly, growing from $2.7 billion 2 years ago to $3.8 billion now. Other highlights across the export sector include fruit, which is up $1 billion over the last 2 years to $2.7 billion, and wine, up $260 million over 2 years to now $1.6 billion.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Alastair Scott.
To the Minister, how does the services sector figure highlight how New Zealand's trade composition has changed over recent years?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, the strong growth in the services sector, led by tourism and international education, highlight how the economy's increasing diversification has cushioned the tough time experienced by the dairy industry recently. Despite a nearly $3.5 billion reduction in export returns from dairy compared to 2 years ago, overall exports have increased from $67.5 billion in 2014 to over $70 billion, with a range of industries contributing to this increase. There are, of course, risks ahead, particularly due to the increased protectionist sentiment around the world, and New Zealand will have to continue to work hard to maintain our progress.
There we go. Supplementary question, right, Honourable Winston Peters.
Minister, if those figures contain the GDP growth in this country, will you tell us whether those figures contain the GDP per person growth in this country, or has that stagnant figure been left out for convenience?
So 2 questions there. The Honourable Stephen Joyce can address one or both.
Well, Mr Speaker, the member is a day ahead of himself because the GDP figures come out tomorrow, but we'll talk about those then, no doubt. But actually the last time they were quite good. I think GDP per capita was over 1% from memory. But, Mr Speaker, I think the member should be very proud of these figures for his fellow New Zealanders, because I think of all the 40 years he's had in politics, we've never seen such a strong improvement in our external accounts.
Order. The Minister will resume his seat.
Yeah.
Point of order.
Mr. Speaker, we really have to dissuade that member and his colleagues from indulging in vain personal attacks. it's likely to lead to slaughter in this House.
No, the members are better than that. There was hardly a significant attack in that. It was certainly a political question that was asked and a political answer was given. Question number 2, James Shaw.
Thank you.